Hi, everybody. It's Wednesday, March 24th. We are 7 months out from Election Day, and today I'm going to be filling out the 2026 Senate map with my latest predictions. With the safe states already locked in, Republicans hold a 44 to 43 seat advantage, and remember, they only need to reach 50 to hold the majority, with Vice President Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. Let's now go through each of the remaining races in order of competitiveness. Starting in Florida, the Sunshine State is no longer a battleground, having voted for President Trump by 13 points, and the last two Senate contests both went Republican by double digits as well. In 2026, this is a special election to fill the remainder of now Secretary of State Marco Rubio's term, which was filled by former State Attorney General Ashley Moody. She's now running as the unelected incumbent. I have every reason to think she's an above-average nominee, having posted the strongest statewide performance in Florida in decades in the 2022 Attorney General race. The only thing keeping me from placing Florida in the safe column is the national environment, which is trending toward a blue wave. Democrats currently hold about a 5-point edge on the generic ballot, and President Trump's approval rating is at a new record low. If those metrics hold or worsen for Republicans, Moody's margin is likely to be dragged into the single digits. But I still fully expect her to hold the seat, barring a wave the likes of which we haven't seen this century. It's a similar story up in Montana, another firmly Republican-leaning state, though the dynamic here is more complicated. Republican incumbent Steve Daines announced he would not seek re-election just minutes before the filing deadline, preventing Democrats from fielding a strong challenger and effectively anointing his chosen successor, Kurt Alm, as the Republican nominee. The move has received widespread backlash across the state, and the independent candidacy of former University of Montana professor Seth Bodnar has created even more uncertainty. We don't yet have any polling for a potential three-way race between Alme, Bodnar, and the eventual Democratic nominee, but it's worth noting that both forecasters Inside Elections and Sabato's Crystal Ball have downgraded their ratings from safe to likely, and I'm inclined to follow suit here. Next is Minnesota. This one is likely Democratic. Incumbent Tina Smith is retiring, forcing Democrats into a contested primary that has turned ugly at times between Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan and Congresswoman Angie Craig. Despite Craig having the private backing of party leadership and a clear fundraising edge, Flanagan has consistently led in the polls and is a clear favorite according to the prediction market platform Kalshi. Republicans, meanwhile, are likely to nominate former NFL sideline reporter Michelle Tafoya, an intriguing candidate who in a more favorable environment could have made noise here, but with Minnesota's already blue lean and the likely blue wave environment, the fundamentals will be nearly impossible to overcome. Staying in the Midwest with Iowa, another open seat with the retirement of Republican incumbent Joni Ernst. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson quickly jumped into the Republican primary, giving the GOP a strong replacement candidate. She was the only one of Iowa's 4 Republican House members to overperform the fundamentals in the 2024 elections. Democrats, meanwhile, are left with a bench of mostly state legislators after being shut out of higher-profile offices as Iowa has shifted sharply to the right over the past decade. Donald Trump carried Iowa by 13 points in 2024, the largest margin for either party in the state since Nixon's landslide in 1972. Still, as Democrats gain favor nationally, Republican odds in Kalshi's Iowa Senate market have consistently narrowed. I personally don't see Democrats coming close to flipping this seat and have the Hawkeye state down as likely Republican. Now, before we go on, let me take a quick moment to remind you to subscribe to the channel down below, because according to my YouTube analytics, more than 2 in 3 of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you're one of those people, please take a second to subscribe. It's completely free, and it really helps me keep making content like this. Also, a quick reminder that you can always find my latest data-driven predictions for every 2026 Senate race on my website at electionpredictionofficial.com. Moving right along to Texas, where more than any other state on the map, the outcome of the primary will strongly determine my rating. Republican incumbent John Cornyn was forced into a runoff by Attorney General Ken Paxton, extending a bruising primary that has drained resources and weakened both candidates' images. Initial reports after the first round suggested Trump would quickly endorse Cornyn, who is widely seen as more electable than Paxton. But with each day that passes, that looks less likely. Meanwhile, Democratic nominee James Tallarico is posting strong fundraising numbers on the campaign trail. Personally, I think if Cornyn secures the nomination, the race would be likely Republican. Texas backed Trump by nearly 14 points in 2024 with one of the strongest Republican swings in the country, and Cornyn is a proven incumbent with moderate appeal. Paxton, on the other hand, is as scandal-plagued as it gets, and if he wins the nomination, I'd go so far as to rate Texas as only tilting Republican, flirting with toss-up potential depending on how large the blue wave ends up being. For now, with the primary still a toss-up, I'll split the difference and have Texas as leaning Republican. I've also got Nebraska as leaning Republican. The Cornhusker state is the most fundamentally Republican among these competitive races, but it has trended more Democratic than any other state in the country since the start of the Trump era in 2016. The Democratic Party has once again endorsed independent Dan Osborne, who you might remember from the last cycle, when he came out of nowhere to finish within 7 points of unseating longtime Republican Senator Deb Fischer. Looking ahead to 2026, Republican Senator Pete Ricketts is a weaker incumbent than Fischer, and the polling we have so far shows Osborne running neck and neck with him in a head-to-head matchup. I still have the race as leaning Republican, but it wouldn't surprise me if it gets even closer down the stretch. Now with that, Republicans are on the precipice of holding control with 49 seats. Democrats would likely need to sweep the remaining 7 states to flip the majority. Some will be easier than others. In New Hampshire, another Democratic retirement has caused more headaches than they would have liked, but like Minnesota, the Granite State still has a fundamental blue lean, and their likely nominee, Congressman Chris Pappas, has no glaring weaknesses. The only reason New Hampshire isn't rated likely, like Minnesota, is the strength of the expected Republican nominee John E. Sununu, who previously held this seat before losing it in 2008 and shares a last name with the state's very popular former governor Chris Sununu, but even so, New Hampshire is still favored to remain in Democratic hands. Likewise, down in Georgia, what was initially seen as Republicans' top flip opportunity is now clearly Democratic-leaning, as incumbent Senator Jon Ossoff is proving to be one of the strongest incumbents in the country, breaking fundraising records just as he did in his 2020 upset win, while Republicans have failed to unite behind a strong challenger with their most likely nominee, Congressman Mike Collins, currently under investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and Ossoff consistently leading all potential opponents in the polls as the question increasingly becomes not if he will win, but by how much. Democrats also have 2 major flip opportunities in North Carolina and Maine. Maine is the only seat on the map Republicans are defending in a Harris-won state, while North Carolina is the only seat they are defending in a state Trump carried by single digits. And at this point, given the national environment and each state's dynamics, it would be nothing short of a disappointment if Democrats fail to flip both. In North Carolina, Democrats landed their top recruit of the cycle in former Governor Roy Cooper, who left office last year with strong approval ratings and has already leveraged his existing campaign network to raise more money than any other non-incumbent in the country, while Republicans have nominated former RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, who has no prior electoral experience and, at least so far, trails Cooper by wide margins in the polls. Then in Maine, the state's partisan lean of D+4 suggests that in a neutral environment between 2 generic candidates, the Democrat would be favored by twice that margin. And when you factor in the current D+5 or better national environment, Republican incumbent Susan Collins would need to overperform fundamentals by more than 13 points to hold her seat, something she managed in 2020 when she won by 9 while Joe Biden carried the state by 9, but her personal approval rating has dropped sharply since then, and she now ranks as the second most unpopular senator in the country. Democrats, meanwhile, still face a key decision between the establishment favorite, Governor Janet Mills, and progressive outsider Graham Plattner, and early general election polling suggests Plattner would be the stronger candidate, leading Collins by 6.5 points, while Mills trails by about 1. Now going back to the map, Democrats have every reason to believe they can flip both of these races, and I currently have them rated as tilting Democratic. The party should also feel cautiously optimistic in Michigan, though again, the retirement of incumbent Gary Peters has left them more vulnerable than they would have liked in this evenly divided state. Democrats have not lost a Senate race in Michigan in nearly 30 years, but like in Texas, the incumbent party has dug itself into a primary hole, this time a highly competitive three-way race that continues to drain resources, while Republican Mike Rogers will coast to the nomination and benefit from the campaign infrastructure left over from his very narrow loss last cycle. With all that being said, were it not for the expected blue wave, Republicans would likely have the edge here, but given the national environment, Democrats are currently seen as strong favorites on Kalshi with an 82% chance of winning. That does feel a bit high to me, but I do agree Democrats have the advantage. That now ties the seat count at 49 and brings us to the two races that will ultimately determine control of the Senate. For Democrats to flip the majority, they will almost certainly need to win every race already in their column on this map, and whether they reach 51 will come down to the outcomes in Ohio and Alaska, both strongly Republican-leaning states where Democrats have very strong challengers who are uniquely popular in their respective states. Let's start in Ohio, which is a special election to fill the remainder of the term vacated by J.D. Vance. Republican Governor Mike DeWine appointed Lieutenant Governor John Husted to the seat, making him the unelected incumbent. Husted is a strong candidate, but he faces an even stronger opponent in former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who has a clear track record of overperformance, outrunning Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket by 8 points last cycle, despite losing his seat by about 3. Now, Ohio's R+5 partisan voting index suggests that a generic Republican should beat a generic Democrat by around 10 points in a neutral environment. So in theory, another 8-point overperformance combined with the expected Democratic national edge could erase that margin and then some. But personally, I do not think an 8-point overperformance is realistic this time around. Brown is now running against an incumbent rather than as one, and Husted is a much stronger candidate than Bernie Moreno was. So for now, I still have Ohio as tilting Republican, roughly in line with the current polling average, which has Husted up by about 1.5 points. And that projection gives Republicans 50 seats, enough to guarantee control with the vice president's tiebreaker. But with Democrats at 49, they would still net at least 2 seats compared to today, and we still have Alaska to go, where the candidacy of Mary Peltola has completely reshaped the race. The former Democratic Congresswoman won a statewide election in Alaska as recently as 2022, and is certainly the only Democrat capable of flipping this seat. She also benefits from the fact that Republican Dan Sullivan's approval rating has collapsed, now sitting at just 39%, with 47% disapproving, making him the third most unpopular senator in the country, just ahead of Susan Collins in Maine. All three major forecasters have downgraded Alaska from safe to lean Republican, and the most recent polling goes even further. The last 4 surveys of this race all show Peltola ahead, albeit within the margin of error. She is truly one of a kind, and it would not surprise me at all if she ends up winning, but for now, I still lean on the fundamentals and have the race tilting Republican. So based on my latest projections, Republicans are on track to hold their Senate majority, but with at least 2 fewer seats, while Democrats are closer to flipping the Senate than they have been at any point this cycle, with multiple opportunities still on the board in Republican-leaning states. But that does it for today's video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts on this map in the comments, and let me know what other elections or topics you would like me to cover next. Shout out to my channel members listed in the description below, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the content. Check out more of my videos here, and as always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.